Can record, Plantain. Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right. So we have.
I wanted to ask you, but let's not ask you.
If you
Okay. So we're going to begin now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Talk to Africans. Today we have today.
Blandine, sorry. Hi, guys.
Yeah.
May I please just quietly, sorry to disturb you. Can I ask that we broadcast this live on your Facebook page? I want to do a watch party for other people that are able to watch it from Facebook. Is that okay?
That'd be awesome.
Please. His Majesty has a lot of following. So I have advertised it, and I think a lot of people want to watch. Some can't access Zoom, but I think it would be easier for them to access it via Facebook. Is that okay? If it's possible, if you can record it and make it live on Facebook on any of your page. I know Professor Anthony usually does it. Is that fine?
He says he's working on that.
All right, that's fine, perfect. I think as soon as I see it, I will then do a watch party from my side. Thanks.
Okay, so we're waiting for you so that we can go. We can begin.
You can go ahead, please.
Right. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Like before, and welcome to Talk to Africans. This is a talk show we have every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on Zoom. We come together as Africans to discuss the situation in Africa and find a solution. Especially to the economic situation in Africa, and why not the spiritual state of Africa at the moment. And there's a lot of things that we need to get back to the roots. And this is one of the shows that we've come up with so that we can talk amongst ourselves and find solutions amongst ourselves for a better Africa. And with us today, we have our panelists. We have Bishop, His Royal Majesty Joshua Maponga III, who is a philosopher, theologian, a founder of Farmers of Thought, African Indigenous movement.
Plantain, we can't get you. We can't get you. Please, can you walk your mic? Check on your mic well. We can get you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So I'm sorry for that. I was talking about one of our panelists who is Bishop His Royal Majesty Joshua Maponga III, all the way from South Africa, who is a philosopher, a theologian, founder of Farmers of Thought, African Indigenous movement, and it's a long, long list. There's a lot he has to do, or he is doing, for the betterment of the African continent. Good evening, Your Majesty, and welcome to Talk to Africans. It's actually a huge, huge pleasure to have you with us this evening. And thank you so much for taking your time or taking time off your schedule to join us this evening. Thank you so much, sir. And also, we have as our second panelist, Professor Mike Anthony. Good evening, Prof. And thank you as well for joining us this evening on Talk to Africans. It's really a pleasure having you with us this evening. So today our topic for the day actually we'll be talking about reclaiming Africa's indigenous wisdom, understanding Africa's spirituality and tradition. So from the topic we can see that we're talking today deeply. We want to talk deeply about African spirituality and the controversy or the misunderstandings of African spirituality. And my very first question to you, His Royal Majesty, is how can we reclaim our development through indigenous knowledge?
Thank you for the great honor. My esteemed panelists and my esteemed fellow Africans on the continent and beyond, we thank you for sparing some time also and inviting us to your platform. I would rather step back a little bit and give you context to biology so that I could be able to move into what I want to talk about. Many of us, we are obstructed by education and obstructed by religion to such an extent that instead of them being doors that are leading us to spirituality, they have become gates that are obstructing us to spirituality. Firstly, you need to understand that what is in a seed will be in the tree, and what is in the tree will be in the fruit, and what is in the fruit will be in the seed. The cycle goes on and on and on. The entire nature as we have it is not confused about its genes and its mutations. The birds that are falling and nesting on the tree sides, they don't go to school to study how to make nests. But comes a time when it must have its eggs naturally within itself, in its own DNA. There is information and knowledge on how to make a nest. Only human beings need to be taught how to be spiritual. How sad when elephants find the bones of an old elephant that died weeks, months, years ago. They can smell the bones and stop there and cry. There is no school of ethics, empathy that they go to, but they can connect spiritually. Women are our saviors in this world. Unfortunately, they have forgotten their womanhood because the cosmos that is in their womb is connected to the cosmos that is in the sky. That's why your periods are not according to the calendar, but according to the cycles of the moon in the sky. Because when man wants to create himself, he needs to enter the cosmos of divinity and spirituality, and women are the doors to that spirituality that we're looking for. The presence of the water, which we drink, which marries with the 70% water that is in the land. That also speaks to the waters of death, where children are sleeping in. Speaks to the mystery of divine connection. By the time you're coming to harvesting indigenous knowledge, I'm starting from that far end so that you understand that there is information that is transmitted from one generation to another generation, consciously or unconsciously. The fears of the past, the love of the past, the anger of the past are all transmitted from one generation to another generation. It is true, therefore, that when you look at me right now and the picture that they put on my advert, if you look at me right now, you're looking at my father. Word for word. If you look at me right now, you are looking at my grandfather. Even the shape of my head, the flow of the beard, what you see here, there's nothing to do with me, but that which was deposited into me. We will have failed in the first class of spirituality if we think that humanity is just physical manifestation. We needed to understand that there is also a spiritual transmission that happens. And within that comes the idea of gifts, comes the idea of talents, comes the idea of spiritual gifts. It is known in the families where we come from, such and such a family used to give birth to warriors. I mean, in Ghana, for example, boxers, good boxers. You don't just come from one family and you start being a boxer. You need to be born from a certain genealogy of good boxers, and you also become a good boxer. Why? Because there is a transmission of information. So when it comes to indigenous knowledge systems, as I'm sitting in front of you right now, I cannot claim anything when it comes to knowledge. Some of the stuff that I'm talking about is nothing that I know, except that there is a code that is written in my spirit which needs to be activated, and it is translated into information. It belongs to you, therefore, as young people, to come closer and learn how to harvest that information and convert what you call in your schools informal education into formal education. But I beg to differ. That which you call informal is actually formal, because the informal education is based on experience and outcomes, whereas what you call formal education is based on books, anticipating experience. So at the end of the day, harvesting indigenous knowledge stretches itself from governance, those are royalties, business, education, entertainment, arts, culture, and all these are industries that Africa has not yet learned how to harvest these industries and convert them into businesses. Only here and there do you see people making some crafts and they sell the crafts. Just for the purposes of this presentation, when you look at my head, for example, there's no grandmother who went to school to study and learn how to put these beads in the fashion in which they are. But generation after generation, these beads are put together with precision and without error, because that information is written in the DNA of generations. Now, you may think that it's just a colorful hat, but if you look very carefully, it has colors on it. And those colors, some of you have done more studies, you understand the colors of food. So when you look on my hat, you're not just looking at a hat. You are looking at the green foods that you must eat. And what do the green foods do? The red foods that you must eat, what do they do? The yellow foods, the purple foods, the maroon foods, and etc. Some of you have studied deeper. You can go into your chakras. And you want to say, no, the Asians and the Indians understand this thing better than we do. Hold on a little bit. You're actually looking at the 7 chakras in front of you right now. The 7 days of the week. The 7 spirits that are within us. 7 controls of energy. So that until you as educated young people start learning how to unlock ancient knowledge systems, which sometimes are just presented to us as a piece of art. And you may think that is just a piece of art, when in fact it can be converted into money and into business. How do we convert indigenous knowledge into business? I'll give you just one example so that we can give also others a chance to talk. Our medicines, for example, our indigenous medicines, there is a great divide between the academic institutions and indigenous medicines. Indigenous medicines are scientific because they have a track record of thousands of years. They are tested, they are tried, they've been experimented on. It took our fathers years and years to know what this root will do, what that root will do. When you mix that root and that root, the results are like this. This one, you can't eat it, you will die. You must burn it first, only use the ashes. This one, don't eat the roots, eat the leaves. This one, it is the barks. This one, it is the milk. This one. So you find that this entire research center sits on a simple prescription from an indigenous person. Here is the divide. Until our chemistry students can go to Harvard, go to Oxford, go to Massachusetts, proliferate in academic excellence in the world of pharmaceuticals and chemistry, and then go back to the village and use their knowledge to now harvest indigenous knowledge, 1. 2, classify it. 3, package it. 4, create dosages out of it. 5, pattern it. 6, replant and replenish those crops. That's now agriculture. 7, then register it into the official pharmaceutical industries so that the rest of the world can benefit. Boom, we've just created one aspirin. Boom, we've just created one Nurofen. And if we understood how to positively access indigenous knowledge with the information that we now have, and put it in a condition where the world can now consume it. Because if right now I come to you with a big bottle full of roots and I say, drink this, you may not be able to drink because culturally, in the Western colonization, you have been taught what is dirty and what is clean. So it's up to you as the young people to say, how do we take this information, harvest it, package it? I will not speak better than what Dr. Selby was saying in terms of what is the process of us beginning to benefit from our own indigenous knowledge. I've just mentioned one aspect, that is chemistry. The same goes for governance. These laws we are struggling with. We have indigenous governance systems. How do we convert that into business? We have indigenous African sports. Right now we're watching basketball, we're watching soccer, we're watching tennis, and we're watching all these things. Why can't we create businesses out of our own indigenous games? Fashion, another. You find some of these Lesotho blankets being sold in France for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. And yet they come and buy these blankets in South Africa here for less than $15. But because now they're in Munich, and now they're in London, and now they're in New York catwalk, those things are being charged over the moon. Are we saying as Africans, we don't know our own value? So that we visit our indigenous knowledge, we visit our cultural expression with your education of marketing, with your education of engineering, with your education of pharmacy, with your education of education itself. How do you begin to access indigenous knowledge? And I will conclude by saying much of the information that we are looking for on the outside, it is actually written in our DNA. So here is the hashtag. The library of the white man is in books that are behind me. The library of a black man is in the spirit. The question is, how do we activate the African spirit to tap into its own DNA and begin to download through visions, through dreams, through premonition, through intuition, through deja vu, through gut feeling, and convert all this information that is constantly flooding our minds in the night and convert that into a technology. Our women fly at night, we call it witchcraft. I say it is the aviation department that has not yet been discovered. We strike each other with lightning in the villages. I say it is the highest power station that has not yet been discovered. I say so because in Beijing and in China, gunpowder used to be called magic powder until someone learned how to put gunpowder into a bullet. Now it's business. Now it's ammunition. Now it's technology. And countries are cashing in on gunpowder. But in its primitive state, it used to be magic and witchcraft powder. So the question is, how much of that witchcraft powder do we still have running around Africa, which has not yet been tampered with? It has not yet even reached the test tube so that it can be tested as to finding the active ingredients and package this knowledge system into mainstream, and Africa can begin to cash on its own natural resources. I thank you.
Thank you very much, His Royal Majesty, for that. Before I actually asked you this question, I was supposed to ask you what actually does the Africa's indigenous wisdom, what actually is it comprised of? But as answering the question, you gave us a few points, and I would really appreciate it if you could give us more of this. What makes Africa or African spirituality so rich?
I wrote a paper some 2 years ago, I think, if not 3 years ago, entitled 7IR. 7IR. The world is struggling with 4IR. I was able to download 7IR. Because the systems that you're already building in the first revolution and the second revolution to the fourth revolution, the question is, are those systems relevant in the fifth revolution, in the sixth revolution, and in the seventh revolution? And again, understanding spirituality, we need to understand numerology in terms of numbers. So by the time we are reaching the 7, we know we must come back to 8, and 8 is as good as 1. It means we are starting again. So I'll make it simpler for you. I'll give you the paper in one sentence. African spirituality is the ability to live in harmony with nature. The Bushmen, the Aborigines, the Khoisan, and some of the primitive tribes like the Americans, the Red Indians, were already living at 7IR. The definition of 7IR is a revolution where we manufacture nothing, where we own nothing, but where we have everything. Manufacture nothing, because you cannot tell me that you're getting civilized by building concrete buildings along the face of the earth. And you want to convert Africa into a Manhattan. You want to convert Africa into Silicon Valley. Okay, fine. Let's do that then. Sign more treaties. Cut more trees. Dry up more wells. Pollute more air. Question. Now Africa is Manhattan. What quality of water are you going to be drinking? What quality of air are you going to be breathing? What quality of food are you going to be eating? Question, is this civilization? Question, is this healthy? Question, is this profitable? Question, when you have the profit, where are you going to spend it? Answer, health is wealth. Without good health, even the richest man is poor. So how can we spend so much investments in terms of becoming unhealthy, then take all the profits of investments to get back the health that we destroyed with development? I call that foolishness in one sentence. So when you come to the concept of accessing that knowledge system, it is found in observation. Take note, observation is the mother of all learning. You need, therefore, to spend more time in vegetation, in the ground, in the forests, in the waters. Observe, observe, observe how nature works. Sir Isaac Newton wrote the laws on gravity while he was sitting in a garden and an apple fell on his head. Boom, aha, experience. The laws of flotation were written when a man jumped in a tub and then half of the water came out. Experiment done. So it means that my weight is equivalent to the amount of water that I take out of a full tub. So immediately you begin to observe nature. When do the birds fly into your land? When do they fly out of the land? When do the creatures come out? When do the creatures go in hibernation? Is there something that the human being can learn also in terms of business, in terms of health? Why do we have more lemons and oranges and citrus fruits during winter? Are those fruits not good for influenza and other diseases and opportunistic diseases that are found during that season? Is nature not intelligent? You will be shocked that nature is alive and nature is far much more intelligent than even Einstein himself and the best of our professors standing on a table in a lecture room. Therefore, to access indigenous knowledge, start learning when an animal that is a vegetarian, like a cow, that eats grass all its days, the day it gives birth, the cow eats its own placenta. Boom. Why are you eating a placenta? It's meat and you are vegetarian. What is in that placenta? Who has bothered to do a research to find the number of T cells, to find the number of immunization, to find all the blood that it has lost out? Is this not a way that the animal is actually replenishing all the nutrients that were drained out during the childbirth? And the eating of the placenta becomes actually a health system. Boom, Africans do witchcraft. Why? Because when a child is born, they take the placenta, and when a child is sick, then they cook the placenta or boil it and give the child to eat. But are you not aware that the highest amount of immunization and stem cells are actually found in the placenta? The water of the placenta is equivalent to the waters of birth. And to reset the immune system of the body, here is the factory settings that are stored in the placenta. Hospitals right now are harvesting these placentas and selling them away as medical waste and making ponds and vaselines and certain powders which women are using for their faces and making tablets. Are we saying that Western civilization is much better than African civilization when our forefathers have been doing this for the longest of time? Again, how do the forefathers know that a placenta can heal unless they were looking at the buffaloes, looking at the antelopes, looking at the cows, looking at them and how they treated their own placentas? And when humanity learns from that, then you want to call it wisdom. I call it observation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the deep explanation and making us understand that a lot of things that we see today and think, it's strange or, amazing. It's things that have been existing before, and it's things that we need to know that make us as Africans. Thank you again so very much, His Royal Majesty, for the contribution. Good evening, Prof. Are you there with me tonight?
Yes, I'm there. I'm there.
So, His Royal Majesty had been talking about indigenous knowledge, what it's actually made, or what actually is indigenous knowledge. But my question to you is, how can this knowledge be helped, or how can this knowledge be helpful in counteracting or countering imposed or
I
dominant
suggest
notions
I
of
suggest
development
that you
and social
I
progress?
suggest that we all mute our mics, and if possible, let's all mute our mics so that we can hear you. There's a lot of echo. I can't even hear what you're saying. And then when the one who is speaking, maybe the administrator can help us out there so that we don't have unnecessary disturbances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that. Um, can everyone hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So my question to you, Prof, is how can the uh, uh, the reclamation of our indigenous knowledge be helpful to countering imposed or dominant notions of development and social progress?
Thank you very much, Blandine. And I want to begin by appreciating His Royal Majesty for that beautiful insight that he actually just expatiated on. I want to go back to say that's the highest level of teaching, but he took it from the very foundation. You know, went back to nature to actually learn. That is the highest dimension of teaching. And those are some of the things that even many professors in their podium would never be able to use as a means to actually illustrate truth. I want to say one of the things that makes Africa actually different is not the fact that we are black in skin color. It is not the fact that we have got uh, mineral resources and all that. It's like once I said here that the resources that Africa has never been the concern of the African people because Africans, as a holistic people, never saw it as a problem actually living without these material things because the African people are people that live from inside out, not from outside in. They do not live from material to the inside. And to become a true African, or let me use the word, a true African is that person who lives by connecting to his inner person. Because true spirituality is getting to know who you are. That's what spirituality is all about, getting to know who you are. And that is at the same moment the greatest of sciences, getting to know who you are. And so to get to actually be able to reclaim this knowledge, a lot of us needs to start learning to know who we are because that is where the problem is found. And most of what we learn, somebody like me, I've taken more than 20 to 30 years of my life in learning. And I'll be sincere to tell you, it has diverted me from what I am supposed to be gaining, which is supposed to be self-knowledge, which is supposed to be the realization of who I am, which is supposed to be getting to know the God that is in me. I want to say this to you. When you go back into African history and looking at the way the African ancestors used to look at man, they used to consider that man is a spirit. Or let me use the word breath, or man is what today we call spirit. In them, they used to call it ka. And ka actually is what the Greeks call pneuma. And uh, the Grecians in claiming Numa, they are looking at the dimension of the spirit. And our ancestors used to say man is car, implying that the body is just a house. The body is not the man. The body is a house that carries the man. And this body that carries the man permits him to interact with his environment. So it makes man completely linked with nature. So that is where that holistic nature comes in, where you are not disconnected from your environment, neither are you disconnected from your spirit dimension. You are one with the spirit and one with the environment around you. So there is no differentiation. And in this permitted them to not learn from the environment, to learn rather to learn from inside. Why? Because they were struggling to get to know who they are. They wanted to know the God that is inside of them because they believe that they are a drop of water out of the great content of water. I just want to make you understand this. Being a drop of water does not make you different from the ocean. The only difference is in quantity. And so, since they understood that God is like the ocean and they, as individuals, are drops out of that ocean, it permits them now to have this understanding that they have the same contents as the ocean. And that gives them the understanding that they have the same capacity as the creator God. If God is the creator of the universe, then they have that same ability to create. You see, I said something the other day on this same platform where I said, uh, the reason why you go to Egypt and you are able to see pyramids, you go to Sudan and you're able to see pyramids, is not because these people went into a particular architectural institution to learn. It is what they actually downloaded from the inside. So it was an let me use a word. Those were scientific images that came from inside, not from outside. They never learned it from somewhere. They learned it from inside of them. And they were able to design it and were able to scientifically mount it up. That is not something that has been able to be understood till this present day. I will tell you, if Europeans knew how to actually replicate what they saw in Egypt as pyramids, they would have done the same in Europe and in America. But because they did not understand how it was done, they claimed that might be it was done by giants and whatsoever. But inside each and every one of us, we are giants. And since these ancestors believed that there were spirits here, we talk of gods. They were gods. So, in understanding themselves and seeing themselves from that dimension as gods, permitted them to be able to do the things that gods only can do. And that is the platform from which these great scientific, this great architectural, this great mathematics, and all the wonderful things that we've been able to learn that are presently being taught in schools, the philosophies that we have been seeing, the great medical principles that have been outlined today and put in books, all came from inside of these people. It never came from books that they learned. And so, if we are going to reclaim this particular spirituality of the African people, because I'll be sincere to tell you, the greatest of sciences is the greatest of spirituality, and that is knowing you. That is knowing you. And like I said, these people knew themselves, they got to know themselves. And so, if we are to reclaim this knowledge, we need to start going back to know who we are. And I want to be sincere to tell you that the reason why most of these schools were created and were to actually learn what people who never went to school learned, brought up. And most of the schools that were brought to us were to make us not to be able to identify who we are. I always say African people have a problem of identity because we have been made to see ourselves from the Western direction, light. And we at times want to leave ourselves with comparison, trying to become who we are not, trying to become Europeans. And so, as long as we are struggling to become Europeans, we are actually moving away from who we truly are. And so, I think it is very, very important for us to start going back to find out who we are, because that is where we will be able to make that difference. So the reclamation of who we are is found in self-identification. You might want to ask me the question, how can we now self-identify? How can we get to know who we are? I said this thing, I will say it again. Spirituality is all about self-consciousness. You should know that. It's consciousness coming to an awareness, getting to tap into the inner light that you possess inside of you. It is not a light that is found outside. It's not something that you need to pray for, because I've seen a lot of Africans, they have a problem with the idea of prayers. They always are struggling to pray to a God that is outside of them. They are always, so they have become too religious rather than becoming spiritual. They have become too traditional rather than being spiritual. So that is where the problem of the African people is found. They have taken the wrong thing that has taken them out of position. Now they are so religious and so traditional that they are no more spiritual. And spirituality is the most simplest thing that you could ever know. It is the most simplest path to ever take. Spirituality is all about self-knowing. I'll repeat that and repeat it as several times as possible. It's all about self-knowing. And once a person gets connected to know who he is, you discover that you will not need a school to learn anymore. You will not need any book to read because the greatest of books are found in you. Books that have not yet been touched are found in you. Today, in one way or the other, Europeans have coined some of these words and called them potentials. They are struggling to use names, but this idea of potential by them is limited to talents. But there is more to an individual than his or her talents. In your potentials, some people call it subconscious mind, the ideas that have been placed there before. This, like I heard His Royal Majesty said, uh, there is a French word that he used. It's a French word that's to talk about to know. There's a French word. I've forgotten. I'm trying to pick that word. He used something. It's a French word he used, which has to do with getting to know something from inside without having ever known it. You already know it. It is already in you as a body of knowledge, but you are struggling to find out where you got to learn it. You don't know where you learn it. It's just there.
Deja vu.
Deja vu. Yeah, that's the word. Deja vu. So it is already in you. You have it in you because it is there. It had been there. That's an experience you had been having. At times we have dreams and we get to say it was a dream. No, that was an experience you were having. And if you could actually link yourself to your consciousness, you earn more. You get to discover a lot about yourself. You get to connect to the truth about you because that truth is not found out there. It's not written in a book. It is hidden right deep in you. And so that to me, getting to know who you are is the only means through which we can reclaim the indigenous wisdom and knowledge that we as Africans have. Because I'll be sincere to tell you that everything we have today in the world as knowledge, which is written in books, came from this dimension of existence. It never came from something people sat down and learned. I have written a lot of books. Some of them I've done them through research work, but there are others that I wrote. Most of the books that I've written on spiritual issues were not written because I learned from somewhere. I wrote them because I got into me and I could see a lot of things and I penned them down so that people could read. That is that is what makes these particular books so edge cutting in a way where you read, you want to still read, you want to still read because it seems so strange to you. That is the way to go. Get back inside, get to know who we are because man is not created to live from outside. This body is just a house that is holding who we truly are. And the content of this body is the entire personality of God. You need to find out who is inside that body. Once you identify that person, you will not need another person to teach you. You will have the best of insight that could ever be given out. Nobody will need to teach you that this is the way God is because you would have seen God. I want to use our Hebrew Bible. When you go to the Torah, when you read Psalms 82 verse 6 says that I have said you are gods. You are gods. That's a declaration that somehow I don't know if it is being used. I have said you are gods, and all of you are the sons of the Most High. So it implies that you are gods. God is inside each and every one of us. And I heard, so I read through the scriptures. I also read the writings of Christ Jesus, the wordings of Christ Jesus, as actually declared by one of his disciples when he said, that's John, he says, if the word, if they that received that the word came to them were called gods, what more? So what am I trying to say? I'm simply trying to locate you somewhere to identify that for most of us who say we are Christians, the mindset of those who wrote the scriptures, I don't know, they had an objective. And using this word again, locating God in people, I have said God is in you, not out of you. So God is not somewhere that you need to start seeking for apart from the God that is inside of you. That is the only true God that really exists. Until you identify him, you will be worshiping a strange God. And that is what our ancestors believed and held. The belief that God is not out, God is inside. So prayer to them was discovering who they are. So once you want to say you want to truly pray, true prayer is searching to know yourself. And that is the only means to spirituality. That is the only idea of spirituality. And so that is where we have a problem today. Uh, in me speaking like this might make some persons want to ask questions about, don't you believe that there is God? I believe in one God, yes. And I also believe that each and every one of us is a God. And until we see that, we will never actually know God. And that is why if you can see your brother as a God, that's coming back to bring us what the Ubuntu principle is, Ubuntu philosophy is. We are only as important to one another as we are able to identify ourselves as gods. And we will then understand that the God that is in me is there, and that other person close to me is a God. So our experiences brought together can make a great civilization. And I want to I want to actually accept with our beloved bishop. He made a statement that I hold so strong in my heart. And that statement is that we must get back to start learning from our environment, learn from even the animals around us. When you learn from them, you identify something. They don't need to be taught who they are. They already know it is in them. It is part and parcel of them. So I am not supposed to learn to become who I am. I need to just know it. But today, our formal education has become our greatest limitation. And I think that we need to correct that. So, Plantain, that is what I can tell you in relation to your question. Self-identification is the only way to reclaim what we have lost.
Right. Thank you very much, Prof, for picking time out to answer the question. And I'm hoping that all of us that are listening have something to say, have a question to ask. Like this person, Susan West, who asked this question, and I'm sure she's directing a question to you, Prof. Is there a higher power outside of us?
Sincerely, there is a higher power outside of us. That power is the power that created us. It's just like I said earlier that in relation to the mindset of our ancestors, which I hold onto it, that there is one God. And apart from there is the one God, there is also the many. Don't forget that. There is the one and the many. And this many is us. The one God is like the ocean, and we are drops of the ocean. that sprang out of the ocean. That then gives you the understanding that there is the universal God. And this universal God is the God that you are struggling to see him out of you, but at the same time, he is not out of you because he is not only transcendent, he is also eminent in you. So God is not only transcendent, as some of you are struggling to look, he's eminent in you. And until you identify him in you, you can't actually identify him from outside. Thank you. I don't know if I answered the question.
Right, thank you very much, Prof. And I'm hoping, Susan West, that he's answered your question. So that just indicate on the chat as you sent your question, so we know that you are okay with that answer or you're satisfied with this answer that he's given you. Then we can continue with the show. And my next question, His Royal Majesty, is for you, and we're talking Africa's spirituality. And I actually want to find out, why is African spirituality such a controversy?
The controversy around African spirituality stems from the conflict of cultural dominance. Cultural dominance. We like it or not, there is a problem of the dominant culture, which is an economic culture, which becomes an academic culture, which becomes a pharmaceutical culture, which becomes a fashion culture, entertainment culture, governance culture. And if you want to dominate over a group of people, you cannot dominate over them only in one sphere and leave other spheres unattended to. Culture, therefore, becomes the custodian of the conscience, the ethics, the morality, the compass, the connection, the spirituality of a nation. If you want to get a ship lost at sea, then steal the compass or dismantle the compass or make the compass malfunction. If you have been at sea, it's nice to swim at the beach. 60 to 100 kilometers into the deep, immediately when the horizons have disappeared, everything looks exactly the same. And if you have not been a sailman or a sailor, you may think you are going east when you are going west and south and north. African spirituality, therefore, remains our conscience. If the African can have his conscience in his hands, the African becomes insubordinate to external forces of influence. The African will not become compliant to colonial expectations. The African will not become a servant of demon-crazy governance systems. The African the list of will not start growing to an extent where the European community cannot even come here and pick up an ounce of gold. When an African's conscience is in its place, an African refuses to be a slave. And therefore, how do you break a man? There are a few books that you could have read on how to make a slave, how to make a Negro, how to make a Negro a Christian, the usage of Christianity in terms of managing the conscience of the black people. The only reason we're not killing white people in Africa is because the Bible says, thou shalt not kill. If you throw away that book, Africa will become a bloodbath. Therefore, and I literally say this with a great amount of understanding, every white man must be a Christian, for the very reason that it is because of that Christianity that they are still alive. Had we not had our consciences tampered with this Eurocentric Christian expression, we would not have tolerated this nonsense that has constantly haunted our borders. We would not have carried Chinese on our shoulders. We would not been able to live with neighbors as white people. Why is African spirituality contested? Because if you allow the African child to plug back into the wall of electricity, where the power and the currency and the current, the voltage is potent, once the African plugs back into that wall, the walls of Kemet, the walls of the greater kingdoms of Ethiopia and Nigeria, walls of Great Zimbabwe and Embo kingdoms, immediately go back into that wall and you find what the white men did to your forefathers. You cannot tell me that you can wake up in the morning and take your money and give it back to the same colonial hands. So you break people's spirituality. That is the head of African survival. And in my own words, the fastest way to kill a snake is to break its head. Unfortunately, the African's head has been crushed. The compass has been distorted. The people without knowledge of their roots have no knowledge of their being. And unless and until we know where we are coming from intrinsically, we cannot express ourselves extrinsically, externally. Why is African spirituality contested? Because it is that which makes us different from the rest of the world. I want to end up with a small little joke, just to lighten up the room a little bit. The whole biblical narrative that says Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Beautiful. Then they come around, these Europeans, and say, so Shem is the father of the whites, Japheth is the father of the Indians, and Ham is the father of the blacks. That's a weak argument. Can you tell me biologically if Noah was a black man or a white man? And if you can confirm to me that a white man by the name of Noah gave birth to a black man biologically, I mean, let's go back to the laboratory right now. Make a white man produce a black man, and I'll tell you that you are in Mars. But ask me if a black man can produce a white man, and I'll tell you that you're on earth. Therefore, the theology that says start reading from the children of Noah misses the genealogy of Noah. And if you can identify the genealogy of Noah, possibly you can identify the genealogy of Adam. And if we are clear on the genesis of humankind, I'm using the biblical text selectively so that even biologically and scientifically, Christianity seems not to appreciate and understand even the text itself. Put it on record. The black gene cannot be produced by the white gene, full stop. But the black gene can produce the white gene. Why is African spirituality contested? Because it is the original. Why is African spirituality contested? Because the African has what the rest of the world, particularly the European community, does not have. Why is African spirituality contested? Because African spirituality is a currency. Immediately you are able to tamper with spirituality. Economically, you can move people, as my honorable professor was saying, into buying, into investing, into spending their money, migrating away from themselves. Artificial hair, artificial bums, artificial breasts, artificial this, and that becomes a multi-billion-dollar industry. Why is African spirituality contested? Because if the African can become himself, the colonial system will become bankrupt. I thank you.
Thank you very much, His Royal Majesty, for that answer. And it's especially for the choke, which actually made a lot of sense because that's what a lot of people tend to believe. And it's such a question, it's a question that we really need to be asking ourselves every day of our lives. How did this happen, and how can we justify, this theory or this thing that people believe that of Noah and his three sons. Thank you so much, sir. But then I also want to ask you this question because you were talking about African spirituality and the way it was lost with Africans being crushed and their heads being crushed. You actually made example of the snake. The best way to kill the snake is to crush his head. So how then do we activate the black man's spirit, and how do we reactivate the black man's head?
Number one, stop treating people for sicknesses that they don't have. I'm talking about immunization. I'll go to another level so that you may need to revisit this answer and unpack some of the issues I'm now highlighting. Stop treating people who are not sick by immunizing them and pumping diseases into them. Number two, stop eating plastic foods that benumb and destroy the mind. Number three, stop watching entertainment that dwarfs your imagination. Number four, stop loving people that are outside of yourselves. Stop migrating away from yourself. Come back home to yourself. Come back inside yourself. And if you're going to start resuscitating another generation, I move to a transition. I want to see something. I was not born in a hospital. I was born in my grandmother's hut behind the door in a cow dung floor. I had mud smeared on my body when I was born. I grew up drinking milk directly from the cow, eating plants in the bush. Until I was entering high school, then I was told that I'm not immunized. Therefore, I will not be allowed into school because I will bring disease to other children, or I will contract diseases, and then the rest is history. So I want to see something. How about we birth our children naturally? I want to see something. How about we take away corrupt entertainment and corrupt education? I want to see something. How about we restore ourselves as Africans to our factory settings? I want to see something. How about we move away from square houses that are full of paint and full of chemicals that are toxicking us and destroying us, and we use our ancient technology and modernize it for the present generation? I said I want to see something. I want to see something. If the old women who knew how to move their hands on a womb of a woman whose child was now a bridge, and without touching the child, the head would move back into line and be delivered. I said I want to see something. If we can stop eating genetically modified foods to organic foods, I want to see something. If we can become healthy people and all of us can go to sleep tonight and we can have visions, and tomorrow morning we download those visions into practical scientific formulas, I want to see something. You want to reset? Like a phone I hold in my hand, sometimes you download too many apps until your phone can no longer work. 1,500 videos and your memory is full. Take your phone back to the shop and they tell you, we are going to wipe out everything and reset this phone back to its factory settings. Please come back after a few hours. Boom, you have your phone back in your hand, working like a bomb. Is it possible that the African child's memory drive has been constipated, has been overloaded with the sewage of Western technologies, which are not progressive to consciousness development. But we have now become stooges, slaves, robots at the technological and global table where we must be masters. How did the owner of the table end up eating underneath the table? How? The question is, how do we go back to our factory settings? 4 things. Physically, get healthy. Mentally, uneducate yourself and start learning. Thirdly, Ubuntu. Socialize yourselves to live in harmony with each other. Fourthly, understand the language of the spirit and let the cosmos without start connecting with the cosmos within. I want to see something. If we can reset this phone, will it not behave differently? I thank you.
Thank you very much, His Royal Majesty, and I'm really, I don't know, but it's a lot. It's really a lot, and a lot to learn, a lot to know about our African roots, our spirituality, and but I also have this question for you, sir. Before I let you go, that's from Susan West, and she's asking if she can be a Christian and still remain authentically African.
Is that for me?
Yes, sir.
You cannot be what you already are. You can't be black if you're already black. Christianity as an institution means totally nothing because it's a building and a pile of books that have been photocopied by whoever photocopied them. If the definition of Christianity was spirituality, I would have answered that question. But since we are on Al-Kebalam land, Kushite land, Hamite land, since we are on the ground, we cannot be made Christians by Europeans, when actually we were Ubuntu before Christianity. The label of Christianity, if it means holding a cross, speaking in tongues, falling over your table and drinking petrol and eating grass, if your definition of Christianity is playing an organ, putting on a tie, and standing in front and say, praise the Lord, I love Jesus, I think it's a waste of time. True Christianity is sharing food. True Christianity is allowing people who are walking past your house in the evening and you give them a bed to sleep in the night. True Christianity, like we lived in the olden days, when little beautiful young girls will be escorted home by a stranger, and those kids will be equally safe. If you can find me that community, it is far much better than the Christianity you are talking about. In some countries, the population is 60% Christianity. I'm sad to announce this. In those countries, corruption is at 80% with 60% Christianity. So tell me who is corrupt. It means that the religion that is in their heads has never reached their hearts. Being a Christian, therefore, has remained as an intellectual exercise, which I might want to call groupie theology. They are groupies. Are you a Christian? I'm a Christian. Are you a Christian? I'm a Christian. Meanwhile, you are sleeping with each other's wives and husbands and stealing from each other and robbing each other. And yet you profess to be Christians. So don't go there. I don't think you are ready to hear me answer the question if it is worth it to be a Christian. Ask me if it is worth it to be a human being. I'll tell you that humanity is the highest form of spirituality, not Christianity.
Wow. Thank you. Now, I want to ask, is it worth it to be a human being?
Then go to the jungle and the forest, particularly the game reserves, and speak to the animals. You will know what you are by the end of the day.
Wow, thank you so much. That's a lot to learn. Thank you very, very much, His Royal Majesty. Um, there's other questions that I wanna ask you. I want us to talk about post-colonial curriculum and its effects on our African spirituality. How do we deal with that at this point, at this stage?
There is my honorable doctor will help me also as we are proceeding along. There is a concept we always talk about called deconstruction. Deconstruction of etymology, deconstruction of language, deconstruction of ideologies. By you asking me, how do you work around a neo-colonialist education? You have already defined it. It's still colonial. So don't put ribbons on a rotten donkey and you hope that it won't smell. That's not it. It won't work. You can never leave foxes to look after lambs and hope that the sheep will be safe. So I cannot even answer your question on what do you do with a neo-colonialist. Neo-colonialist is still colonial. So until you ask me, how do you change the entire system? Not how do you cosmetic and powder the system?
No, but my question is, how do we change it? How do we change it in favor of our spirituality?
Kill it.
Right. Kill it. Okay. Thank you so very much. That's very short answer, but very, very deep. It will take us, a long while to dissect that.
Maybe I want to be fair also. Looking at your age and my age, maybe this is where a grandfather in me becomes nice also. So maybe you as young people, then you must sit down and start having a group discussion. How do you kill it? When do we kill it? What must we kill? Why must we kill? And when must we kill? Then you need to pick up your 7 interrogatives and say, kill it. And then look at your 7 interrogatives and then pierce them through the ideologies. Then you can see economically, how do we do it? Academically, how do we do it? Politically, how do we do it? Socially, how do we do it? Culturally, how do we do it? Then that's a workshop for you young people. But when I say kill it, I'm actually saying do not keep systems that are destroying you, hoping that they will show mercy. I wrote a small little article the other day entitled "Dogs Eat Meat," full stop. So no matter what, dogs eat meat, and modern economic and political systems, they feed on people. That's it. So the question is, how do you get rid of this dog? Because as long as this dog is in the house, you are breakfast.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much, His Royal Highness. I have another question for you. If Lucky Mokine is asking if you believe in homeschooling since our education system doesn't make us wealthy.
We go to school to learn how to read and write. But the only thing we don't do, we don't read and we don't write, which is a shame of the highest order. That we have professors on the table right here now and today and doctors who have written books and etc. And they will leave their children with stupid people to teach them. Leave your kids with uneducated people who can't even spell their names to teach your children. Now, if you are a good teacher yourself and a professional, you are an accountant, you are an engineer, there's no better gift you can leave on the world but to teach your children your own profession. The way you build wealth is not creating new careers, but plugging your children into your experience and giving them your database, your research, and they inherit wealth. That's how Jews and Indians have beaten us as blacks. You walk around Manhattan, New York, so and so and sons, so and so and sons, so and so and sons, so and so